When a journalist mocked Barron Trump at a charity gala, no one expected his calm response to steal the show. The ballroom at the Fairmont Grand Hotel was nothing short of breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above rows of elegantly dressed attendees, their quiet hum of conversation adding to the grandeur of the annual charity gala. Among the crowd were some of the nation's most influential figures, business moguls, actors, and journalists, all gathered to support a foundation dedicated to helping underprivileged youth. The air was alive with energy, yet an undercurrent of anticipation buzzed as the evening's keynote speaker prepared to take the stage. Seated toward the back, in a less conspicuous corner, was Barron Trump. At just 18 years old, his tall frame and stoic demeanor made him stand out. Though not intentionally, he had been invited by a family friend, a quiet gesture meant to introduce him to a different circle. Unlike many attendees who thrived in the spotlight, Barron seemed content to observe, his piercing blue eyes scanning the room with a calmness that belied his age. The gala had been moving along smoothly. A string quartet played softly in the background as waitstaff glided through the room, serving delicate hors d'oeuvres and champagne. Conversations were warm, and laughter rippled through the crowd. Yet, as the night progressed, it became clear that the highlight everyone was waiting for was the speech. The journalist, a celebrated figure in liberal media circles, had been announced weeks earlier as the evening's keynote speaker. Known for their sharp wit and unapologetic opinions, they were revered by some and criticized by others for their fiery rhetoric. Tonight, they promised to deliver an address that would challenge perspectives and ignite thought. As the MC introduced the journalist, there was a noticeable shift in the atmosphere. Conversations quieted, glasses were set down, and all eyes turned to the stage. Barron, too, leaned back slightly in his chair, his expression unreadable. The journalist stepped up to the podium, a confident smile spreading across their face. Dressed impeccably in a sleek black suit, they exuded charisma. The audience responded with polite applause, but there was an edge of expectation. Would they push boundaries tonight, as they so often did? What no one anticipated was just how far they would go. As the spotlight illuminated the stage and the journalist began to speak, the evening's elegance would soon give way to a tension that no one in the room would forget. The journalist began with ease, their tone conversational and laced with charm. They joked about the city's infamous traffic and shared a light-hearted anecdote about a past gala mishap involving a toppled champagne tower. Laughter rippled through the audience, breaking some of the initial tension. For a moment, it felt like any other high-profile event, polished, predictable, and harmless. But soon, their tone shifted. What started as general commentary on politics and culture veered toward a more pointed critique. They referenced well-known political figures, poking fun at their quirks and missteps. Each jab drew chuckles and nods from parts of the crowd, but others exchanged glances, sensing the speech was edging into uncomfortable territory. Then, the journalist paused, their eyes scanning the room. A sly grin spread across their face as they said, "And speaking of political dynasties, I see we have the youngest Trump in attendance tonight." A murmur spread through the room as heads turned toward Barron. He sat still, his face calm but his posture slightly more upright. The journalist continued, their voice dripping with mockery. "I wonder what it's like growing up in a tower of gold, far removed from reality. Must be nice, right?" The crowd fell silent, the previous laughter replaced by an uneasy tension. Some glanced at Barron, curious to see his reaction, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Barron, however, remained composed. The journalist, emboldened by the silence, pressed on. "Tell us, Barron," they said, leaning slightly forward. "What's it like being a Trump? Do you practice your signature in gold ink? Or is that just your dad's thing?" The room held its collective breath. For a moment, it seemed as though Barron might stay silent, letting the comment slide. But then, he rose slowly from his chair. His tall frame seemed to command the room effortlessly, and as he adjusted his suit jacket, the silence grew even heavier. "Thank you for your question," Barron began, his voice calm but steady. "You know, I've always believed that a gala meant to support underprivileged youth is an odd place to make assumptions about someone you don't know. A few gasps rippled through the crowd, followed by a smattering of applause. Barron continued, his tone unshaken. I'm here tonight because I care about the cause. These kids don't have the luxuries I grew up with, and if being here can help shine a light on their needs, that's what matters, not who I am or what my last name is. The applause grew louder, but Barron wasn't finished. He glanced directly at the journalist, his piercing blue eyes unwavering. You're free to criticize me or my family. That's your right. But maybe tonight, we could focus on something bigger than ourselves. The room erupted in applause, this time sustained and heartfelt. The journalists stood at the podium, their confident smirk replaced by a sheepish expression. They muttered a brief acknowledgement before stepping away, their speech abruptly cut short. As Barron returned to his seat, attendees around him offered handshakes and words of support. His calm demeanor and thoughtful words had shifted the entire tone of the evening. By the end of the night, the focus had returned to the children the gala was meant to help, and Barron Trump's measured response served as a powerful reminder. Sometimes, the quietest voices carry the loudest message. Their smiles tightened, and the focus landed squarely on Donald Trump. Well, we can't talk about the state of the world without mentioning the man who made orange the new black. The journalist quipped, drawing scattered laughter. Love him or hate him, you have to admit he's the gift that keeps on giving, for people like me. The crowd's response was mixed. Some laughed openly, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Barron Trump, sitting quietly at his table, remained still, his expression unreadable. If the journalists noticed his presence, they didn't let on, at least not yet. The jokes kept coming, each one sharper than the last. The journalist moved on to Trump's policies, his tweets, and even his public appearances. The laughter began to thin out, replaced by a growing sense of unease among the attendees. But the journalist wasn't finished. And of course, they said, pausing for effect, we can't forget his most overlooked legacy, the next generation. I mean, let's talk about Barron. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Heads turned toward Barron, who sat motionless, his face now the center of attention. The journalist's tone remained playful, but the words carried a sting. Imagine growing up in a golden tower surrounded by marble everything, and your dad tweeting about Kofefi while the rest of us are just trying to survive Monday mornings. That must have been character building. The attempt at humor fell flat. Some in the crowd chuckled nervously, but most sat in stunned silence. The spotlight of the moment, unasked for and unwelcome, had landed squarely on Barron. But instead of crumbling under the weight of the moment, Barron remained calm, his composure unshaken. What he would do next, however, would leave the entire room reeling. The room seemed to hold its breath. All eyes were on Barron Trump, a young man thrust into the spotlight without warning. The journalist's words lingered in the air, heavy and cutting, as the crowd waited for his reaction. But Barron didn't flinch. He didn't shift in his chair or glance around nervously. Instead, he sat perfectly still, his expression calm but unreadable, his hands resting lightly on the edge of the table. The silence grew louder with each passing second. A few people exchanged uneasy glances, their discomfort palpable. Even the journalist seemed to notice the tension, their confident smirk faltering ever so slightly as they glanced toward Barron's table. Perhaps they had expected a laugh, or even a dismissive shrug. Anything but this quiet defiance. Barron's stillness wasn't born of indifference. It was something else entirely. His presence, understated yet commanding, seemed to grow as the moment stretched on. The room, which moments earlier had been buzzing with conversation and laughter, was now unnervingly quiet. It was as if everyone, even those who had chuckled at the jokes, suddenly realized the weight of what had been said. His silence wasn't just a lack of words. It was a statement in itself. It said, I hear you, I see you, and I am not moved. A murmur broke the silence as someone near the stage whispered to their companion. The journalist cleared their throat, attempting to regain control of the moment. Tough crowd, they muttered into the microphone, forcing a laugh that no one echoed. The tension was thick, wrapping around the room like an invisible fog. And then Barron moved. Slowly, deliberately. He pushed back his chair and stood. The soft scrape of the chair legs against the floor was the only sound in the room. At just over 6 feet tall, he was an imposing figure, his height matched by an aura of unexpected maturity. He looked out at the crowd, his gaze sweeping the room before settling on the journalist. Barron didn't need to speak, yet his presence alone commanded attention, silencing even the faint whispers at the back of the room. He stepped away from his table, his movements measured but purposeful. The room remained silent, every eye fixed on him as he made his way toward the stage. Reaching the edge of the platform, Barron paused, his calm demeanor unshaken. He looked up at the journalist, his piercing blue eyes unwavering. For a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath once more, the weight of anticipation almost unbearable. Then, in a steady, measured tone, Barron spoke. "Thank you for your comments," he began, his voice calm but firm. "I've always believed that humor has its place, and I respect your right to express your opinions." The journalist shifted slightly, their earlier confidence now replaced by a hint of unease. "But," Barron continued, his gaze unwavering, "I also believe that there's a line between humor and disrespect. Tonight, we're here to support a cause, to help underprivileged youth who don't have the opportunities many of us in this room have been blessed with. I think we owe it to them to focus on that, rather than on tearing each other down." A ripple of applause began to spread through the room, hesitant at first but growing stronger with each passing second. Barron turned slightly, addressing the crowd now. "It's easy to make assumptions about people we don't know," he said, his voice steady. "But maybe tonight, instead of focusing on what divides us, we can focus on what unites us, the desire to make a difference." The applause swelled, filling the room with a warmth that cut through the earlier tension. Barron nodded slightly, his composure never wavering. Before stepping back toward his table, the journalists stood frozen for a moment, visibly unsure of how to proceed. They muttered a brief acknowledgement, then stepped away from the podium, their speech unfinished. By the end of the night, the focus had returned to the children the gala was meant to help, and Barron Trump's calm, measured response served as a powerful reminder that sometimes true strength lies in grace under pressure. Barron Trump stood and walked toward the stage, each step measured, his posture straight and unwavering. The journalist froze, their earlier confidence evaporating as Barron approached. The crowd watched, their eyes wide with a mix of anticipation and disbelief. No one knew what he would say or do, but one thing was certain. This young man was about to own the moment. When Barron reached the edge of the stage, the crowd's collective gaze followed him. The tension in the air was almost tangible, every second feeling like an eternity. He stopped a few feet away from the podium, standing tall and composed. With a voice steady and deliberate, he began to speak, his words cutting through the silence like a blade. "Thank you for your insight," he began, his tone calm but firm. His choice of words caught the journalist and the audience off guard. There was no anger, no trace of indignation, only an eerie sense of control that seemed far beyond his years. "I've grown up watching people make assumptions about me, my family, and my life," Barron continued, his eyes fixed on the journalist. "It's almost become a game to some, a way to fill in the gaps when you don't know the full story. And I get it. We're public figures. It comes with the territory." The room was silent, captivated by the clarity and maturity in his voice. Even those who had quietly laughed at the earlier jokes now sat motionless, their expressions tinged with unease. "But there's something important that often gets overlooked," Barron said, his tone shifting slightly, a subtle intensity building. "Behind every headline, behind every punchline, there's a human being, someone with their own struggles, their own dreams, and their own story. You may think you know me because of who my father is, but you don't, not really." The journalist, who had been gripping the edge of the podium, now seemed visibly uncomfortable. Barron's words weren't an attack. They were a mirror reflecting back the weight of what had just occurred. "What I've learned," Barron said, pausing for a moment, "is that respect doesn't have to be earned. It should be given freely, especially when you don't know someone's story. A ripple of murmurs ran through the crowd. But Barron wasn't finished. He turned slightly, addressing the audience now as much as the journalist. "We live in a time where it's easy to tear each other down," he said, his voice steady but filled with quiet conviction. "Words have power. They can hurt, or they can heal. They can divide, or they can unite. And I think we could all use a little more of the latter." The audience was spellbound. Barron's words, spoken with a calm resolve, carried a weight that seemed to transcend his age. It was clear that he wasn't just responding to a moment. He was speaking to something much larger, something universal. Barron took a step back, his gaze once again locking with the journalists. "I hope this gives you something to think about," he said softly. There was no malice in his voice, only a quiet strength that left the room in awe. He turned and began walking back to his seat, the soft clicks of his shoes on the polished floor the only sound in the stunned silence. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the journalists stood frozen, their earlier bravado completely dissolved. But as Barron sat down and the applause began to build, the real impact of his words would echo far beyond that room. The applause started as a hesitant clap from somewhere near the front of the room, but it grew quickly, spreading through the crowd like wildfire. Within moments, the entire ballroom was on its feet, erupting into a thunderous standing ovation. Some clapped with admiration, others with a sense of redemption for the awkwardness that had hung in the air just minutes earlier. Barron remained seated, his expression composed but humble. He nodded politely to the crowd, acknowledging their reaction without basking in it. For him, the moment wasn't about applause, it was about speaking his truth. The journalist, now visibly humbled, stepped away from the podium, their earlier confidence replaced with quiet introspection. They glanced toward Barron's table but said nothing, their silence speaking volumes. As the evening continued, the energy in the room shifted. Conversations, once filled with superficial chatter, now carried a deeper tone. Guests approached Barron throughout the night, offering quiet words of admiration and respect. "You have wisdom beyond your years," one woman said, her voice tinged with emotion as she shook his hand. "Thank you for reminding us of what really matters." Another attendee, an older gentleman with a kind smile, leaned in and said, "You didn't just stand up for yourself tonight, you stood up for all of us. That took real courage." Barron accepted their words with grace, offering a polite smile and a simple, "Thank you." Despite the praise, he didn't linger in the spotlight. He returned to his quiet observation, letting the night unfold around him. By the end of the gala, it was clear that Barron's response had left a lasting impression. The evening, which had begun as a glittering social event, had transformed into something far more meaningful, a reminder of the power of humility, respect, and thoughtful dialogue. As attendees filed out of the ballroom, many carried the weight of Barron's words with them. Conversations spilled into the streets, and the story of his calm, measured response quickly spread beyond the walls of the Fairmont Grand Hotel. Within hours, videos of the moment surfaced online, sparking discussions about grace under pressure and the importance of treating others with dignity. Barron Trump, a young man who had been thrust into the public eye through no choice of his own, had managed to turn an uncomfortable moment into a powerful lesson. And in doing so, he reminded everyone that true strength lies not in loud words or sharp retorts, but in quiet conviction and unwavering respect. The journalist, still standing at the podium, attempted to muster a smile, but it was clear the moment no longer belonged to them. Barron, seated back at his table, didn't react to the applause. He remained composed, offering only a polite nod to the attendees around him. It wasn't humility or shyness. It was the quiet assurance of someone who had said exactly what needed to be said. Within hours, snippets of the moment began flooding social media. Attendees had discreetly recorded Barron's speech on their phones, and the footage was now spreading like wildfire. Tweets, Instagram stories, and TikTok clips captured the essence of the evening, with captions ranging from admiration for Barron's composure to critiques of the journalist's misplaced humor. "Barron Trump just schooled an entire room on class and respect," read one viral tweet. Another post, shared by a prominent celebrity in attendance, stated, No matter what you think of his family, this young man just gave us all something to think about. News outlets picked up the story the next morning. Some praised Barron for his maturity, calling it a defining moment for someone who had spent much of his life in the shadow of public scrutiny. Others debated the ethics of the journalist's remarks, questioning whether public figures, especially young ones, should ever be fair game for such commentary. The journalist, for their part, issued a statement the following day. Comedy and commentary are powerful tools, but they must be wielded responsibly. Last night, I crossed a line, and I apologized to Barron Trump for my remarks. Yet not everyone accepted the apology at face value. Talk shows, podcasts, and online forums buzzed with heated debates about the incident. Some argued that Barron's speech was a much-needed call for civility in an increasingly polarized world. Others saw it as a poignant reminder that even those in the public eye are human beings deserving of respect. For Barron, however, the frenzy of attention seemed irrelevant. He returned to his daily life with the same quiet dignity that had defined his response at the gala. Those who knew him said he barely acknowledged the uproar, choosing instead to focus on his studies and personal interests. Yet, while Barron moved on, the lessons from that night lingered, sparking conversations that reached far beyond the ballroom. As the dust settled from the night of the gala, its ripple effects continued to echo far and wide. News outlets eventually moved on to other stories, but the moment lived on in discussions at dinner tables, classrooms, and offices. People dissected the evening not just for its drama, but for the powerful lessons it left behind. Barron's calm and thoughtful response had struck a chord. In an age dominated by outrage and instant reactions, his choice to approach the situation with poise and perspective was a refreshing anomaly. Many drew parallels to their own lives, asking themselves, how often do we pause before reacting? How often do we choose words that build instead of words that destroy? For some, the incident was a wake-up call. It highlighted how easy it is to dehumanize others in the name of humor, politics, or entertainment. The journalist's comments served as a stark reminder of the power words hold, not just to entertain, but to wound. Parents used the moment as a teaching opportunity for their children. Videos of Barron's speech became a tool in classrooms to discuss respect, empathy, and the importance of standing up for oneself without tearing others down. Teachers praised his ability to address conflict with grace, encouraging students to think critically about how they communicate. Yet, the most profound impact of the night was its ability to bridge divides. If only for a moment, people from different political beliefs and walks of life found themselves united in admiration for Barron's maturity. It wasn't about his last name or his father's legacy. It was about a young man demonstrating that respect and empathy still have a place in the world, even in the face of provocation. By choosing to respond with kindness and integrity, Barron had reminded everyone in that room, and countless others watching from afar, that dignity is a choice. His actions showed that no matter how heated or polarized a situation may become, there is always power in choosing to rise above. As the conversations continued, many began reflecting on the broader implications of the moment. Was it possible to hold strong opinions without demeaning others? Could society find a way back to civil discourse? Even in the most contentious of times, Barron's response didn't offer definitive answers, but it did spark a conversation that transcended party lines and personal biases. The ripples from the gala were felt in unexpected ways. Some attendees reached out to the event's organizers, thanking them for hosting a night that turned out to be far more meaningful than they had anticipated. Social media continued to buzz, with hashtags like #ClassAndComposure and #Lessons from Barron trending for days. The incident even inspired some to reevaluate their own behavior online, pledging to approach disagreements with more thoughtfulness and respect. Through it all, Barron remained steadfastly out of the spotlight. He didn't give interviews or issue statements. Instead, he let his actions and his words speak for themselves, and in doing so, he left an indelible mark on everyone who witnessed the moment, proving that sometimes the most powerful voice in the room is the one that chooses calm over chaos. The night at the gala may have started as a celebration of charity, but it became so much more. It was a reminder that true leadership isn't always about grand gestures or bold declarations. Sometimes, it's found in the quiet conviction of standing up for what's right, even when it's not easy. Barron Trump showed the world that respect, kindness, and empathy are timeless values, and that they still have the power to inspire change. One sentiment seemed to resonate most. Words can wound, but they can also heal. It's up to each of us to decide how we use them. The power of words was made undeniably clear that evening at the gala. In an atmosphere charged with tension and divided opinions, Barron Trump's actions didn't just defend his own dignity, they inspired a moment of collective reflection. His calm and measured response served as a reminder that respect, even when undeserved, can be a transformative force. As the night unfolded, those who had initially chuckled at the journalist's remarks were left contemplating the impact of their laughter. Conversations among the attendees shifted from lighthearted chatter to meaningful discussions. Some quietly admitted to their table mates that they hadn't thought about how the jokes might feel to someone like Barron. Others shared stories of times they, too, had been judged unfairly or had let their own words cut deeper than intended. It was a rare moment of vulnerability, one that connected strangers in unexpected ways. The story of Barron's composure didn't end in that ballroom. Within hours, the events of the night began to ripple far beyond the Fairmont Grand Hotel. Clips of his speech were shared on social media, spreading quickly as viewers across the globe watched the moment play out. "This is what grace under pressure looks like," one viral tweet declared, accompanied by a video of Barron standing tall and addressing the audience. Another post, shared by a prominent journalist, read, "Barron Trump just reminded us all that dignity doesn't need to be loud to be powerful." News outlets picked up the story, running headlines that highlighted Barron's maturity and the lessons his actions carried. Barron Trump's gala moment sparks national conversation on respect. One headline read. Another posed a thought-provoking question. Do we give words enough credit for their power to heal or hurt? In a time often defined by sharp divides and heated rhetoric, the incident struck a chord, becoming a catalyst for discussions on how society engages with one another, especially in public spaces. The journalist, who had unwittingly ignited the moment, released a public apology the following day. "I realize now that my words, intended as humor, crossed a line," they wrote. "I apologize to Barron Trump and to anyone else who felt hurt or uncomfortable. This experience has reminded me of the responsibility that comes with having a platform." While some accepted the apology as sincere, others remained critical, questioning whether the statement was driven by genuine remorse or public pressure. Despite the whirlwind of reactions, Barron himself stayed remarkably grounded. Those close to him described how he returned to his daily routine as if nothing extraordinary had happened. He attended classes, spent time with family, and focused on his hobbies, quietly avoiding the limelight. For Barron, the moment wasn't about gaining recognition or proving a point. It was about standing up for himself and showing the power of calm conviction. As the media frenzy began to fade, the story found its way into classrooms and community discussions. Teachers used videos of Barron's response as tools for teaching respect and empathy. Students were encouraged to think critically about how they interact with others, especially in moments of conflict. One teacher shared, "Barron's ability to rise above the situation and speak with poise is something we can all learn from, no matter our age." Parents, too, saw the incident as an opportunity to instill important lessons in their children. Dinner table conversations turned into reflections on the power of words, with families discussing how kindness and respect can leave a lasting impact. "If Barron can handle something like that with grace, then so can we," one mother told her children. The message was clear. Dignity is not just for the spotlight. It's something to carry in everyday life. Perhaps the most profound impact of the evening was its ability to bring people together. For a brief moment, political affiliations and personal opinions were set aside as individuals united in admiration for a young man who exemplified the values of respect and composure. Barron's response wasn't about his last name or his family. It was about character. And in that ballroom, surrounded by influential figures, he proved that character is what truly leaves a mark. The lessons from that night extended beyond those who were present. Online forums and social media platforms buzzed with users sharing their own stories of learning the importance of respectful dialogue. "We need more moments like this," one user wrote. "It's a reminder that even in a divided world, we can find common ground if we choose empathy." For many, the story was a wake-up call, a reminder of the responsibility that comes with every word spoken, every joke told, and every opinion shared. The journalist's remarks were a stark example of how easy it is to dehumanize someone for the sake of entertainment or a fleeting laugh. Barron's response, on the other hand, was a testament to the power of choosing a higher path, even when provoked. As the weeks passed, the gala became less about the moment itself and more about the broader lessons it inspired. People across the nation found themselves asking, "How do I use my words? Do they uplift or tear down? Do they bridge divides or create them?" Barron's example encouraged introspection, sparking conversations that went far beyond him. In the end, Barron Trump's actions reminded us all that words have immense power: power to wound, power to heal, and power to inspire. His choice to respond with calm dignity showed that respect is not just a reaction. It's a decision. It's a decision we make every day, with every interaction. Let Barron's example serve as a reminder for us all. Choose kindness, choose empathy, and never underestimate the impact of your words. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories that challenge and inspire us to be better. Let's keep the conversation going and continue striving for a world where respect is not the exception, but the rule. The story of Barron Trump's calm and dignified response serves as a powerful reminder for how we can navigate life's challenges. In today's world, where words are often used carelessly, it's vital to choose kindness and empathy. Even in moments of disagreement or tension, respect doesn't require agreement. It requires understanding that everyone has their own story. When faced with provocation, pause and respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Let your words build bridges instead of walls. Remember, the strength of character isn't shown in how loud you speak, but in how wisely you choose to use your voice.